Well, I'm originally from a small town, Dillon, South Carolina. I went to school, Dillon is near Myrtle Beach, Columbia, Florence.
Yeah.
Yeah. South of the border.
South of the border.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's Thunderbird?
oh, that's
Yeah.
Florence.
That's Florence. Close, very close.
Yeah.
Florence. Magnolia Mall. Yeah, that's our closest mall. And went to school in Greenville, South Carolina, Furman University. And moved to Atlanta in 1999, where I started working for The Gap, which is, strange enough, Gap had a cologne called number 655. That's really where the title comes from. I worked for The Gap, and the cologne, no, number 655 is the chemical number for the color blue. And I like blue and 655, that's some background. But I worked for The Gap for a while, and just started writing, and I wrote this story, the idea of the story, and I submitted it to Click Magazine at the time. I don't know if you guys remember Click Magazine here in Atlanta. Submitted to Click, Nestor and Dwight, and Dwight really liked the story, so it started off as a recurring story in Click Magazine here in Atlanta.
Now, the character, is any particular character in the book that kind of you really identify with more than any of the others?
I think I identify a lot with Craig. However, Craig is a mixture of people I've met and stories I've heard and things I've created. I'm sure we
We'll
will.
be back to that.
I'm sure we will.
Is there one particular favorite? My particular favorite one out of all of them was Cyrus. I'll tell you why a little bit later on as we finish this discussion. So you identify with Craig.
Mm-hmm.
Craig is a homosexual that lives upstairs.
Yes.
Who has an attraction to William, who lives downstairs, who is actually straight,
Correct.
per se, as we read further. And so you identify more with Craig.
Yes.
Now, how did you develop the character of William? I found it very interesting because William was straight but had some type of desires.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of because you pulled out some interesting things to William, but what made you kind of really hone in on William
And the thing is,
with his background,
Right.
Uncle West and all of those things?
the interesting thing about William is that William came from just really stories and people I've met. I don't know William per se, but there's some qualities of William that I pulled actually from my first relationship in college. Which is funny because my ex from college, his last name is Williams, so that's where William kind of comes from. And my college experience is that I was dating this guy who actually had a girlfriend on campus. And I think that's what has shaped or affected my future relationships from the way that I dealt with that relationship, which I have had to overcome because I allow him to have a girlfriend, but I wouldn't allow him to have another boyfriend. So to me, that made sense in my mind at the time because he was straight on campus. He was a Kappa. His girlfriend was AKA, and we all knew each other. And that's where a lot of the William qualities come in.
I think all of us, if we'll be honest, have always had some type of attraction to some straight, the untouchable guy, the young guy that we could not really, unless I'm by myself, that we wanted, but just could not have. Which I thought was interesting because, but I did find that very interesting is when Craig, the first night when they started, I'm assuming it was like Friday night, when he opened up the door, and William embraced him in a towel. And one of the things that kind of stuck out with me, I think we all have those straight friends that just do the strange stuff that gives you, it makes you give them the blank stare and the side eye. It's like, you really Jermaine, because you know me. We both. So I thought that was very, very interesting. I really appreciate it because we all have those friends. So one of the other things that happened and with William and Craig, which I thought was interesting, is actually when William embraced Craig and he enjoyed the moment, if you will, which kind of left Craig throne for Luther. Now, this is where I get distraught because we classify William as straight, right? So what, in essence, defines a man as being gay?
And the problem with that is that if you know the story, William was molested by his uncle. And it's always been the question is, just because I enjoy it, does it still mean it's still molestation? And just because he got a rise from his uncle molesting him, still doesn't make it right. Because at that time, he was at an age where he wasn't fully developed or didn't really understand the whole sexual thing, and you got this older guy taking your innocence away from you. So he enjoyed it back then. So now he's with another man, and he's enjoying it, but he's an adult now. And now that enjoyment that he knows is wrong is still wrong in his mind. So that's where that comes from. Because that's always been the question. Just because I enjoy it or it felt good doesn't mean it's right, and it's not. And that's what William is battling with in his head.
We may be different, but it's hard for me to love. If I don't know you, how can I really be in love?
Well, you gotta understand though, even though it was initially attraction at first sight, but there were some things that happened that made him love Craig very quickly.
He had sex with me.
He did.
Well, in his mind, as he said, I didn't fuck you, I made love to you.
Right.
But what he did was, and maybe this will go to, let me lead to this then, because it leads to, doesn't have to be both parties. Because if I'm thinking we just fucked it and you thinking we making love, then somebody's off.
Right. Right. And at that point, I think that although Silas was in love with Craig, it wasn't reciprocated, as you found out.
Okay.
So I can be in love at first sight, but the other person may not be.
Cicely, the young girl that William is in having sex with, he's not necessarily in love. The sex is very good with him. And so she comes in and she finds Craig and William embracing. And Craig is actually consoling William from what had taken place and some other stuff, and him telling him about Uncle Wes. And then she uses the word faggot. BT, the Atlanta Housewives, just had the incident where Marla used the same word, faggot. What is your take on using the word faggot?
My reaction would have been like Craig's. I feel like it's a very, 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 very negative, derogatory. Just for me, I don't know if anybody's. For me, it just, especially we like to play sides. If it's coming from one of your friends, it's different. But especially coming from a straight female out of anger, it just And it kind of goes back to my childhood because I have 3 older brothers and a younger sister, and I was the one that was into the books. All my other brothers were into sports and basketball, baseball. I didn't do anything. And then to top it off, I had a Jerry curl. So I was called sissy and faggot growing up. So I think that's where that word, I put that in that book because that's how it came back from that history for me. Because when I was writing for Click Magazine, you'll see in part 2, it's more of a story. But when I was writing for Click Magazine, it was like sex sells. Q, we need sex, sex, sex. They kept telling me every week we need more sex. And so that's why there's a lot of graphic sex, because it was appealing to a certain group at that time. So when I just put it together and made the book, that was the product you got. So in part 2, you're going to get more of a background of each character, some stuff going on and all that good stuff. And as far as the whole story, where the story came from, when I moved off campus, I lived upstairs. And down below me was this straight female, bad bitch. And that's where the story comes. I would hear her having sex. I would hear the headboard, because we shared a wall. I would hear the headboard beating the wall. And I would look out the window, and all these fine-ass dudes would be leaving my place. And that's where the story came from. But, kind of the development. And she would come up sometimes and talk to me. And, like, one thing I remember, she came up to me. I think she was trying to figure me out. She came up to me and was had on 2 different shoes. And she would say, the strappy sandal or the heel. And, like you don't know me, so you're trying to. And then for Halloween, she wanted me to pin her cattail on her. And then she just walked downstairs like nothing was going on. So that's where really the story came from.
and say, number one, thank you guys for supporting me and reading the book. Like I posted on Facebook, when I wrote the book and published it, it's never for me, anything I do is never about fortune, fame. So all these people like want to say, you need to put this on Twitter, you need to do this, that. It's not for me. Just finishing something and having a product to leave behind when I'm gone, that for me is enough. So it's never about the fortune and fame, and this to me was very powerful. I want to say that first and foremost. And the second thing is part 2 of this story is called Craig's Door, and this is chapter 2, just to give you a little bit of the story so you know what's going to happen, or a little bit. Uncle Wes sat in a small office, trying to stay calm, watching the colorful fish swim around in the large aquarium. It had been a few weeks since he had been tested after learning that Silas was HIV positive and they had had unprotected sex. Just when he didn't think he could take it any longer, the doctor to the examining room opened and he emerged into the office. "Come on back here, Wesley," said the doctor. Wes followed him as his heart raced. "Have a seat, son," said the doctor as he adjusted his glasses. He opened the folder that he carried and slowly sat down. "Well, Wesley, looks like you dodged a bullet. Everything came back negative. You tested negative for any strain of HIV and no STDs were present." Wes let out a sigh of relief and leaned back in his chair as he grabbed his chest. "But that doesn't mean you can relax now, Wes. You had unprotected sex with an infected person. Now, Wesley, you know that just ain't right. It just shouldn't happen. Too many of our people, too many of our men are dying from this disease because they slip up sometimes. Remember, it only takes one bullet to kill you. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?" "Yeah, I hear you, Doc." "Good. Now, do you know how glad I am?" his doctor said as he stood up. "I thought I was going to have to cut you off," he said as he started to loosen his tie. Wes's nervousness soon turned into desire as he realized what was about to happen. He and Dr. Rockman had had sex many times in the same office, and now it was time to celebrate his negative status with a hot session. Wes sat in a leather chair as he watched the doctor get undressed. He knew what was under that white lab coat and couldn't wait to see it again. The doctor slowly started to unbutton his starched white shirt as he licked his lips. "Why are you still standing over there, Wesley?" he asked as he reached the last button and removed his shirt. He stood there now in a fitted white tee. He leaned forward on his desk as Wesley approached him. The two men stood face to face. Wes slowly leaned in closer and gently slipped his tongue between his doctor's lips. Dr. Rockman then pushed everything off his desk in one of those dramatic moves you only see in the movies and pulled Wes close to him as they both rolled onto the desk. Soon their tongues began to explore each other's mouths as their hands began to do the same with their bodies. Dr. Rockman reached for Wes's dick. He found it inside his tight-fitting underwear. Wes moaned louder as the sensation of the doctor's warm hand began to stroke his dick. With his other hand, the doctor began to unbutton Wesley's pants and stripped him down to his briefs. Then, not removing his t-shirt completely, he pulled it over his head so that it rested on the back of his neck. Wesley's dick, now fully exposed, stood straight up. The doctor wasted no time. His mouth engulfed Wesley's entire shaft. Wes began to buck his hips and grind into the doctor's face as he grabbed his head with both hands to force him further into his crotch. "Yeah, Doc, yeah," moaned Wes as the doctor began to lick his balls and jack his dick. "I want some of that ass, Doc," growled Wes as the doctor raised his head from between Wesley's muscular thighs. "Yeah, you think you're ready for it?" he asked as he began to walk over to one of the drawers and pulled out a condom and some lube. He went back over to the desk where Wes was sitting with his legs spread wide open. He leaned into his face and again used his tongue to explore Wes's mouth, making his own dick get even harder. Wes could smell his own mustiness in Dr. Rockman's mustache. This drove him wild. Dr. Rockman tore away the condom wrapper with his teeth, opened it, and rolled it onto Wes's dick in one motion. He then got himself ready with lubrication. In seconds, Dr. Rockman was bouncing up and down on Wes's thighs with his legs straddling the desk, looking deeply into Wes's eyes. "Yeah, Wes. Yeah, damn, that dick is good," he grunted as his balls bounced on Wesley's thighs. "Damn, Doc, damn, that's some good ass, Doc." The doctor began to stroke his own dick until he was shooting white cream all over Wesley's stomach. "I'm coming, I'm about to come, oh shit." Wesley's dick was jerking as it shot the hot liquid into the condom inside the doctor's ass. Dr. Rockman grinded and squeezed his muscle to tease Wes's dick. Both men sat there for a second as they caught their breath. "Damn, Doc, it's been a long time." "I know, Wes. But if you ever come in my office again on a slip-up, you'll never get any of this good booty again." Wes' cell phone began to ring.
So look out for part 2, which is Craig's Door, sometime later in the fall.